To my right is Roberta Cambio, Sales Director of Brightcove. And we have Nick Baily, CEO of AE Live, Matt Lille-Palette, VP Sales, EMEA, Stats Perform, and Christof Haslauer, CEO of NativeWaves. Welcome. So Christof, I'm going to start with you since you're on the end. So you're probably thinking you could relax for a couple of seconds. So we do want to start with just setting the table because it's a big topic, right? And we've heard the theme of the day has ironically been graphics data and fan engagement. So from your perspective, where does NativeWaves kind of fit into that whole equation?
Yes, I mean, we talked a lot about fan engagement, and ultimately it's also about the personalization aspect, right? So we talked about this a bit before, but maybe just to give a bit of a context, what we do as a company. So we are a tech provider, and we mostly focus on the event watching experience. So we think about, for example, in live sports, but also esports and also live entertainment, to how we can make that better. And then we work, for example, with streaming platforms, broadcasters, and then to think a bit about, so how can we bring the fan engagement to the next level? And we saw about some great topics there before, where we thought about, for example, like the data integration and how we can do the overlays. But now we want to also take a next step to that. So we think also a lot about these audiovisual elements. So just like thinking about a football, right? Like every game is produced with 10, 20 cameras, and you only see like 5 to 10 seconds in a TV feed. And it would be so cool to just like see the spider cam all the time, like and to find out which content streams are really relevant to which user, because everyone watches it a bit differently. And this is then what we focus on. And then for us, it's really about this being your own director also, but still have the possibility to just have a lean back experience, but then to choose in the right moment and jump, for example, to the instant replay or to the highlights and think about that. And what we then do also in terms of technical stuff, because a lot has to do with latency and the synchronization issues. So we heard before like 1.5 minute latency, and we try to kind of reduce that, right? So what we are looking now, and also with new technologies, that you can actually, in fact, on a broadcast scale over traditional CDNs, you can stream OTT just with 2 seconds latency, or even below that when you are in an in-stadium setting where you have smaller distribution routes. So we are doing that in terms of low latency, but also when you're watching, for example, in a living room, and we all know that topic, like everyone has now different devices. I'm sitting on the couch and stuff is happening there, but then there's also a lot of other stuff going on. And I don't want to have the synchronization issue, what we are now used to, where you are 30 seconds late to the game and the goal is happening and then I see it there. So we also do a lot of, in terms of synchronization, that we are in fact able to then synchronize live feeds on my mobile smartphone to the live television feed, and to be able to really have this kind of as a connected experience also as a broadcaster.
So to synchronize it then, because that sounds complicated, so how do you synchronize 4 or 5 devices that may also be different, let's be honest, to the set-top box in the house? How is that, in layman's terms, how is that done?
Yes, I mean, it is difficult actually, so it took us quite a while to figure it out. So, I mean, we have different approaches depending on the setting, but one solution that we have is our patented audio synchronization, and what then happens is basically the smartphone listens to the audio of the TV, 5 seconds, and is able to synchronize that, then the additional feeds perfectly to it. So it's really just without touching the broadcast infrastructure, because that's also really important, because we don't want to touch what's working, right? So just listening to the audio signal like the human ear, and then is able to kind of synchronize those low latency feeds perfectly to the TV.
Excellent, great. So thank you for that. So Matt, Stats Perform obviously at the center just about of all these conversations when it comes to data and graphics and fan engagement. So give us a kind of sense of what's top of mind for you and what you're hearing out there as far as where this industry is headed around football.
Thanks for having me.
Question, by the way.
Yeah. Well, so you know, the way we contribute is obviously we go and collect everything that's going on a football pitch. Then all that data is going to the database, and then our job is to make the right product to then feed into the industry. So that's going is actually dependent very much on the industry we're talking to. You know, when we set a product, what we're going to do with a broadcaster or our team or a big tech is going to be very different. I think one of the trends we see is probably for the past 10 years. What we've given to the industry was data to describe what was going on the football field. You know, to tell you that Harry Kane had 5 shots, you're not analyzing anything. You're just telling people, well, that's how many shots he took. the next step for us, and we probably went into that space 2 or 3 years ago, properly from a product perspective, is to analyze what's actually going on, is to tap into that database, and we've got more data than anyone else out there, and to dig into that richness and come up with metrics that can actually tell a better story. We've heard a lot about storytelling, and that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do for our clients, is help them use data, which can be raw at the beginning, which is a cold number, and how do you actually use it to a better extent to create a story that people will love. Because we're in the entertainment and sport business, and you're talking about emotions here. So how do you connect something that might appear to be not enjoyable, and how do you help the client create a better story with it? So what we're trying to do is develop models that will be more engaging, that people will be able to understand as well. And that's probably the trickiest part of what we do is, AI, algorithm. That's pretty complicated, especially when you've got a lot of data that you want to process. So we've got to create things that are meaningful from an analyzing perspective, but also easy to understand, because one of the challenge we all have is, you want to address an audience with something they can understand and they can sort of comprehend and reuse themselves. So that's what we're spending a lot of time into.
Well, you mentioned storytelling, so just to follow up, so in the US, I'm a baseball fan, which is like cricket, but I also do fantasy baseball, which is all about statistics and crunching a lot of data to then predict future performance. That's always the end game of all this stuff. But there's also a generational divide, right? So older fans just want to know about some of the more basics, like you said, they want to know shots on goal, and they want to know offsides, and they want to know some of the tackles and that kind of stuff. But the newer, younger kids want to kind of get super techie geeky into these stats. Do you see that out there? Is there a transition of what kind of stats people want?
We definitely see that, and the key is we never look at we look at fans, because you've got so many different people that actually are interested in sports and then in data that you want to serve them all. So we definitely want to address all of these people, because our client need to address everyone. When you hold the right and you broadcast it, you're going to have a casual fan that doesn't have a team and probably doesn't really bother with any of the data, or just very simple graphics. And you've got also the guy that wants to know exactly the number of touch that player has had in the last part of the last 30 meters of the pitch. And the key for us is to be able to design our data in a way that, as someone that's going to integrate it, you can have one source of data, but also have the technical flexibility to be able to address everyone. So we definitely see that trend, and I guess we're probably going to come to it later when we're going to talk about metaverse. The part we're trying to play in it is to guide our clients to how do you personalize the experience for the users, and again, big emphasis on the S in fans. How can you address everyone with the same set of data, and how do you guide people into using that?
Right. Excellent. Great. Yeah. So Nick, from your perspective, AE Live, what does this whole universe of, not the metaverse, but the universe of graphics, data, and fan engagement mean to you, and how you guys approach your content creation and services?
Sure. Well, AE Live is very much at the sort of sharp end of data and graphics. So we capture, we process, we integrate with, we manage, and crucially, we visualize data for sports federations, leagues, and broadcasters around the world. So we do that in a number of ways. So your kind of traditional, team captions, score lines, graphics in-game, live AR in-game, in-stadia feeds on big jumbo screens, etc. Information systems for commentary production, cloud-based for press, etc. We also offer feeds for digital and OTT to our clients, maybe on enhanced data or age demographic or own language, for example. But for us, we're more about that sharp end production. For us, the distribution model doesn't really matter. We're about producing it and visualizing data across all forms. So we work with Matt's team at Stats Reform with a number of data providers, and we'll integrate that into our systems. And our job really is to try and visualize that in the most compelling way possible, whatever the platform. I mean, that can be on site, it can be remotely, can be cloud-based, whichever way it is. For us, it doesn't really matter. You know, we just make sure that happens for our clients.
So now, is the tonnage of stuff you are doing increasing because people say they want personalization, which means obviously you could potentially have 1 million different versions of personalized graphics? I mean, how do you kind of see AI working with what you guys are doing, and are you seeing more of a demand for more graphics around an event as opposed
to... Yeah, for sure. And it's really, for us, it's about just spinning up another feed, really. I mean, in really simplifying it, it's about saying, okay, what do you want to do for this feed? How do you want to do it? And which way is it got to be distributed? So yes, we are seeing that. You know, we can see, I mean, with everyone else on this panel, there's a huge demand out there for personalising the experience. So we're still, the majority of what we do is still that first screen. You know, we're doing world feeds for World Cups and major tournaments. So we're still in that market. You know, we'll be doing the World Cup for FIFA later this year in Qatar, for example. Sure. And that's still very much first screen provision, which is a challenge in itself, obviously.
Right, exactly. So yeah, Roberta, from the Brightcove perspective, because obviously you're on the front lines of this OTT experience, right? So you are looking to obviously give people a personalized experience, yep, right? And give your clients the opportunity to offer personalized experiences. Offer graphics that I'm sure are a graphical look that's sort of attractive and easy usability. And then you also want to discuss data as it relates to just kind of finding out why people are leaving or not streaming stuff. So give us the first step as far as what's going on as far as the product offerings that you guys are rolling out to offer this more personalized OTT environment.
Yeah, sure. So I think there is an interesting mixture of experiences in this panel because, like, I realized Nick and Brightcove share basically the same customers. It's just is more upstream on the production side, and Brightcove is on the D2C, on the secondary distribution side. So for everyone, we are an online video platform. So we take mezzanine feeds and then we process them, adding, you know, DRM, geo-blocking, advertising, and then we push it towards the consumer. Now, the concept of data is also interesting at this point because there can be the data that someone like Stats Perform puts on the field, on the pitch, almost when the content is created. But then further down the line, there is the data that you collect. And I know at the beginning, you know, these sessions we talked about what do fans want. And I think we know what fans want because fans go onto the properties, could be Spurs, could be City, could be anyone, and they click. They click on the merchandise, they purchase tickets for the family, tickets for themselves, they go on social media, they scroll, they like. So there are all these plethora of data, of which video is one part. So as a leading online video platform, we work with a number of partners to make sure that our customers build a data lake. And from this, they can make business decisions. Because after all, we want to make people dream, but we also need to have some money to monetize the content in order to make us dream. And that's where Brightcove plays a role. So you collect this data. We work a lot with partners like Pulse Live, part of the Sony Sport Group. And there, we really make sure that we work to offer the right content to people. Now, you were also, one of the questions was who is doing it well? And we see that there are data-rich sports like cricket that have really created very interesting customer journeys. So if you go, let's say, maybe you could see a clip on Instagram. There is at the moment, you know, the Women's World Cup happening. And talking about women, what women want to see, last night I was looking at their highlights and I could see they were showing the baby of one of the ladies from the Indian team, and you would see all other players interacting with the baby, which you don't expect, let's say, in a Premier League type of coverage. So when you look at all this behavior, then you can predict their behavior. And if you put like a wall, not necessarily could be for just authorization purposes, then you start tracking, you have a user ID associated, you can enable with single sign-on access to all your properties, and here you can track your customer. And if they haven't bought a ticket for a while, well, you could send them an email and say, hey, there is this offer, why don't you bring your family?
Right. So then do you think that Because I think, when I'm sure when you're having meetings with people, and for all of you, that one of the challenges is if we go back 5 years ago, maybe even, well, not 3. Let's go back 5 years before the pandemic. The digital teams have internal arguments, debates, discussions about how to do things properly. What do fans want? We can do 5-second ads. No, 10-second ads are okay. Squeeze backs, pushbacks, whatever. And they, with this color, that color, and they kind of, are we hitting a point where maybe those kind of discussions don't have to happen because they can be either one, to your point, driven by the data. So you don't worry about it, just get it out there and the fans will tell you what works and what they don't like, as opposed to you trying to guess what they like.
I think the beauty of the digital world compared to the broadcast or the satellite is that you can try. So with some sport, we can try, if needed, fail quickly, recover and change. So with some sport federations that sell their rights to broadcasters, they know there are dark markets. So we have worked with them to stream live World Cups to those markets. They gather the intelligence. They see if the following years for the next World Cup, they can sell the rights. And it's a trial. So, and if they see that in a country there is not much, many people watch, well, okay, mistake, move to the next one. So I think that's the flexibility of digital.
I was going to touch on that because I think that's spot on in the way that we always want to know what fans want, and it's important to run your studies and try to understand, what they like or not. And that's going to sound horribly cheesy, but it reminds me of the quote of Henry Ford saying, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. So I think as people within the industry, we've got a responsibility to try things, and from a data perspective, no one else other than ourselves know what's in the database, right, and what we can potentially do with it. So you've got to go in there, try things. You're definitely going to fail sometime, and you're going to learn a great deal. But then sometimes you're also going to be successful at starting trends. And we've got example of that, for example, with expected goals, which is a metric that I brought up to market 5 years ago. It was challenging. We weren't sure that people were going to understand it. And today, it's become like a standard data used across most of the broadcasters and in the world. So I guess taking the responsibility to bring new stuff and challenging the fan as well into what they might like is something that we've got to do as an industry.
Right. Christof, from your perspective, what do you, the next question was, what do fans want? Which is a big question because so what do you think fans want? And is that too simple of a question, I guess?
Yeah, so I can only agree with what we talked so far. So it's also for us a lot of to trial and error, right? So and especially when it comes to multi-view, right? There's so many content, and what we are there seeing is at which points in time different users do what, right? So there are also different groups. So we see more this analytics approach or more this emotional approach. For example, we also had people when we did, for example, the second screen solution, then they just opened the tactical view, the full game, right? They just watched the TV and then the tactical. And we at the beginning were not sure, does even someone want to just have the more strategic cam of the stadium? Or then also in situation, for example, when it comes to these different angles, so when we have the behind the goal cam in certain situation, and that data also plays a key role, not just from the user metric side, but also from the data perspective side, is because what we are looking there is not all the time the same camera is relevant throughout the game, right? At some point they're at this side of the field and some of this one, and there we now know with the live data from the game where the stuff is happening place and to actually automate these changes, even though giving a user the choice. And so this is then placed together to just find out what is relevant. And then also when it comes to this emotional moment. So we had a situation when we did a Bundesliga 2 game, and there we saw there was a penalty cam. And the cool thing is we had this net camera. So you saw it out of the goalkeeper's perspective. And then we gave the people the opportunity to just switch there, right? So you could watch the penalty kick out of this moment, and it gave this very emotional feeling because suddenly you saw the ball coming towards you, right? So you were in the goalkeeper's shoes, and there we see also people switching there and just watching it out of the goal net perspective, right? And this is also like a camera we were should we include it, should we not? And we just tried it out. And then to see there on other cameras, for example, when you just do small different variations don't work so well. This was a bit expected, but just so that we have the proof to, okay, no, it needs to be something else, that it needs to tell a story, to have that story building inside the user experience.
Right. One of the things in the US that's popping up. ESPN's doing a lot more of it. It's called the Megacast, sorry. And then what they do is they build about 13 feeds around the college football, American football, national championship. But what's fascinating is, so one of the feeds will be, it'll be the goal cam, it'll be the, just watching for the field goals. It'll be the sky cam shot. There's one that I love, which is the coaches' room, where you watch other coaches watch the game and then talk about it, which is amazing because you realize what level they're thinking in terms of what's going to happen next. They usually know. They can usually guess what's going to happen. So it's cool to see that content creation and the sort of, and it's not worried about, well, we can only do 3. No, they're on ESPN Plus. They can do 10, 12. There's obviously costs associated, but then again, they're able to more monetize the Skycam investment because guess what? They're getting another opportunity out of it. So and then obviously more graphics and such. So Nick, back to the graphics thing. I want to touch on in the U.S. And I'm sure it's the same here. But they launch a new graphic look for this season, and there's obviously that's when people give their votes on whether they like it or hate it. What's your sense as far as graphics creation to meet fans' needs, and are they looking for different things out of graphics and looks, and how do you kind of figure out style and fonts and
Yeah, it's difficult. I think when you're working, a lot of our clients here, when you're working in the kind of broadcast world, we're asking what fans want, and ultimately you need to make that decision for them. You can take that on, you can do as much research as you want and get that feedback, but ultimately you're making choices for them, which is a much more difficult balance. So I think the trick, and I think broadcasters do it well. I think football as a sport traditionally has probably had less rich and a less volume of data on its broadcast coverage because I think football as a sport, and people probably agree here, there's always been this perception that the purists just want the screen to be football and nothing else, compared to cricket or rugby union perhaps, or NFL, NBA, it's been a lot less stats heavy. So I think we tend to work with our clients really to just understand, how we can get more enhanced and insightful data onto those feeds without tipping that balance between what people find acceptable. We talked here, all of us, about how broad that fan base is. I'm a passionate football fan, and I'm definitely of the older age demographic, as you can see. And what my experience of what I view is very different to my 19-year-old son. The only time he'll spend any time for 2 hours not on his phone is when he's sat at a football game watching it with me. But if we consume football at home, that doesn't hold his attention. So that's a really different, and it's a difficult balance. When you think, the last World Cup, 3.5 billion viewers for the tournament, 90% of those are watching it in their lounges or in bars and in pubs. When we talk about fan engagement, we can't forget those people, because even my son will watch the World Cup on a traditional TV. So I think it's really important that we find ways, and our clients are doing that, where we can engage with fans better. Fans generally are much better educated on the tactics of the game now, and I think they want to see that reflected in their coverage. So a lot of the work we're doing is about how you can reflect things like the press, like defensive pressure in football, which was something that was never really talked about, or as fans we didn't really get 5-10 years ago, but now it's massively a part of the game. How does a defence break out from that pressure from a team? So you want to see stats that can reflect that. We don't see them currently, but we will.
Right, and it's cool to see that. I'm sure that obviously the more you have that data, the more you can crunch it, the more seasons you have of that data, the more you can analyze it, the more you can build a case for this type of defense, that kind of formation. So Roberta, I guess I want to ask you about, because you mentioned a little bit with social and is there a push-pull between social video content creation and OTT service? So if I launch an OTT service with you, what's an effective way to use social media to then drive attention to the OTT service in a good way?
Yeah, no, totally. I think, every club, any federation need to think about the customer journey and the story they want to build with their fans. So social media are a great place to start the journey. You might want to put some clips highlighting a certain personality. Actually, on social media, you have lots of Gen Z. We know that 50% of Gen Z watches highlights, not the full 90 minutes. And then 60% of your audience finds you on YouTube, which is great. They find you there, but then you want to build them onto your properties. And so you need to put a link, simply speaking, to encourage them to watch, the fuller game, to see perhaps additional content about the big champion, they all would like to be. So there needs to be a strategy, a content strategy and a strategy for the customer in order to take them from where they are lingering, maybe Facebook Live, onto your properties, and there perhaps offer, we talk about live, but there is also VOD. So offer additional content about certain people. The cricket guys have been great at creating like the player of the tournament, the player of the day, and you can vote. And you can also see, I'm not really a cricket expert, but you can see different actions. And you can say which one was right and which one was wrong. So you can vote, you can create a fantasy team. And people are on your property, so then you can promote offers. Clearly, another important point when it comes to graphics is that it shouldn't be invasive, because fans want to recreate human behavior wherever they are. So if it's something that is too much, they churn. So if you're too on their face with advertising, it needs to be more subtle, it needs to be done in a different way.
The most depressing thing I've heard the last year was someone told me that as you get older, you see colors differently. So, if you're younger, like 15, 16, you love the neon, the this, the that, and the other thing. But then as you get older, your color cones or whatever, it gets duller, which is so sad. But but it's very interesting because I think a lot of people older of a certain generation react to this. They're like, "That's way too much," whereas the kids are like, "That's amazing." But so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of all spills out, especially if they just want to watch highlights, because there is the rest of the game you should play.
I'll tell you one thing to make you feel better. When it comes to subtitles, you think that, okay, perhaps I need subtitles because I'm Italian.
Well, they love subtitles too.
Yeah, but also maybe someone is over 70, they might appreciate subtitles, but actually it's the Gen Z that also need subtitles because they like to watch content in multiple ways. So if you put subtitles and other ways to keep them on your screen, that's actually a good thing. You get more engagement. So it's not just about becoming old.
Right, exactly. So speaking of getting old, so who wants to tackle, we've heard of Web 3.0, the metaverse, who wants to give some insights into what this means to football fans, or how people in the room should address this or learn about the metaverse? Anybody?
I can take it on, so from a user experience, but then I would also love to hear some other opinions there, because we also see a lot of this mix between reality and also virtual stuff already in live broadcast, right? When you see these overlays, and there we probably have the best candidate to talk more about this, but what we are looking there is we're just looking at the interesting ways to kind of benefit the user experience, right? Because to be honest, a lot of use cases just don't make sense, or just in this showcase state, right? That I turn on once and then it was nice, but then I don't use it in my daily life when watching live sports and stuff like this. So we are looking a bit more to what's actually going to happening, or try to predict that and also build it in our product and in the experience framework that we have to then be able to support it. So what we kind of estimating, so we talked also about the virtual reality stuff, to kind of visit the stadium, and that's, I think, a nice use case. If I'm a fan, for example, and I want to be there, right, and I want to see it in 360, and this is already doable technology-wise, but then it also comes to this augmented overlays, and there what we are looking at is especially also what can I do on the client side, because as we talked about, so much is personal, right, and also if you're too much with the data and so on in your face and kind of make this one-size-fits-all solution for everybody, it might not be nice for everybody that watches it. So I might be interested in, for example, the defensive line, right? So I want to see exactly who the players are and how they're playing together. there and have this augmented over my video overlay. And some other augmented overlays, when I'm a fan, for example, or I'm of a particular football player, to just see where he is behaving and what he's doing, maybe with a heat map integration, inside my video feed. And looking from this perspective, and then of course, I mean, personally, I would love to see, for example, also on my living room table, right, to have this in 3D and have the glasses on. But this is then probably a bit ahead in terms of technology-wise and what we will see then in the future.
Matt?
Sorry. No, I was going to say, yeah, I think, you know, the Web3 metaverse, whatever you want to label it and call it, and I'm not sure we all agree on the definition yet, but I think what it gives us really is a new playground to tell the story I was referring to earlier. You know, we're still in the business of telling story. We need people to be attached to the story, to love them, and then you know, we need to find a way to monetize them. But what I want to get to is people are more interested in players than teams, arguably, now, and we see definitely a trend in that, even in the requests we get from an editorial perspective from our media partners. And as we touched on since the beginning, people want their own experience. And that experience might vary whether you're watching a team that you're connected to or you're just a neutral fan. You know, take an example, myself, I'm a PSG fan. Comment about yesterday, please. But I sell data for a living, but I don't want to be bothered by data when I watch PSG because I've got an emotional connection to that team and that's what I want. But then when I go and I watch a Spurs game, for example, that's where I want to be challenged on my viewing experience. I want to be given stuff to play with. And I think the metaverse is going to create a space where we'll be able to create new experiences and design them around people, not maybe individuals, because that may be taking it a step too far, but we'll be able to capitalize more on the different categories of fun you have, and you can, you know, capitalize on the, you know, new rights, for example, that could be created by the governing bodies, and, you know, use the tech to use it as a playground and create a new experience for everyone.
Excellent. Nick, real quick.
Yeah, I think, you know, firstly, your day was bad yesterday as an SVG, as a Paris fan. Yeah. I'm a Chelsea fan. So, yeah, my day's been really bad.
After then.
Yeah, like I think the metaverse, yeah, I think your point about athletes and teams, I think is a great opportunity for people to engage with the personalities around sport, clearly. I think when it comes to that live viewing experience, for me, it's more about the augmented piece. You know, if we can get to a point where we can watch a game and, you know, watch a game live almost and have some kind of augmentation on, you know, some kind of smart goggle. The whole immersive bit for me isn't really the way I would want to consume sport. One thing I did like though was the NetiveWaves. Have you seen that? The Brooklyn Jets did. No. So they did a whole thing with 100 cameras on Yes Networks where the basketball players were actually rendered almost live.
Canon free viewpoint. Sorry,
second.
The Canon free viewpoint system.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you know, so you could see that is somewhere where you may be able to consume that immersive thing. You could stand in the centre of the court, or you could be on the front row with David Beckham or whatever, watching the game. So, you know, you can see there, but beyond that, probably not yet for me.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, Roberta, last word really quick, because then we're wrapping up. So, last word to you. Any thoughts on the metaverse and the OTT?
Well, I go to the metaverse on Monday, so I need to make up my mind. But Manchester City did a PR in last November talking about partnering with Sony to open the metaverse and building the whole Etihad Stadium in the metaverse and creating experiences. So I think it's a way to where you can meet your peers or your pals and watch content. It's a bit like when 10 years ago people played video games with someone on the other side of the world. And I think it's all about sharing. So I don't know, Sky might have a VP of metaverse operations and create packages for them because it's still a place where you can watch content.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around, and we will see you next year, hopefully, at the Football Summit.